Allison Yip. I am currently a fourth year medical student at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. I did my undergraduate and master's at UCLA.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Allen. I currently go to UC Irvine in California, and I went here for my undergraduate degree as well.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lisa. I'm a fourth year medical student at Rush, which is in Chicago, and I went to undergraduate at University of Pennsylvania in Philly.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Ducatos. I'm a first-year medical student at UC San Francisco, and I did my undergraduate degree at UC Santa Cruz.
Okay, thank you. And so my first question for you is, what was your undergraduate major? And if you had a minor, you could feel free to share that too.
I'm guessing we're just going down the line.
We'll go.
Alrighty. So I majored in bioengineering for undergraduate, and I stayed on and got a master's in bioengineering as well.
And I majored in human biology, which is a combination of the humanities and biology.
I had no idea what I wanted to do in undergrad, so I majored in cognitive neuroscience, which is kind of anything to do with the mind, so including neuroscience, but also philosophy, comp-sci, like a random mix of stuff. And I also minored in creative writing.
And I did my undergrad in biochemistry and then went on to get a master's in biophysics.
Cool. Thank you. So talking about the application process, when I talk to students, we talk about all the different things all the different materials that they have to prepare to really stand out in the applicant pool. And of course, one of those things is letters of recommendation. So I wanted to ask you all, who did you ask for your letters of recommendation, and why did you pick that person or those people?
So I'm not super familiar with the letters of recommendation for med school at this current moment, but when I applied, I was generally expected to have two sort of science letters of rec and then one more of a humanities. The other applicants can sort of correct me or sort of give their point of view, but I had my first letter of recommendation come from the chair of the bioengineering department, mainly because one, he was the chair of the department and could write a strong letter. Two, I took his class and I did well in his class, so I felt like it was a good choice. The second letter I had was from my research PI. He was a very clear choice because he could write me a very, very strong letter. I did quite a lot of research with him, and we just kind of knew each other on a very personal level as well. And then the last letter of recommendation I got, which was my humanities letter, was from my Asian American history professor. I took her class. It did pretty well, and sort of went to office hours pretty frequently and developed a good one-on-one relationship with her. So I felt like she could write me a strong letter.
Thank you.
So for me, I also got one from my research PI. I was the research coordinator of a clinical research group that I'd been in for 3 years. And so she knew me really well. I worked on projects with her, traveled to a conference with her, and did a lot of work. So she knew me really well. I got my humanities letter from a class called Humanities Core that UCI has, which is kind of it's a combined writing and reading class, I guess. And I did well in that. I did really well on a paper. And I think what Allison was saying, you want letters from classes that you ideally got an A in, because you want that person writing your letter to obviously promote your, intelligence. And then the third letter, I honestly can't quite remember who it was from, other than that it was an upper division biology classes, because those tend to be a lot smaller. And I remember going to office hours to actually get to know my professor, because UC Irvine is a huge school, and my classes, upper division kind of got down to 30 students, but that's still kind of big. So you have to go to office hours and put in that extra effort to really get to know your professor. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So kind of on a similar trend, it sounds like what people are generally recommending is something from someone who knows you from doing research, someone who knows you from a science class, and someone who knows you from a humanities class at the very least. I went along a similar route. I do want to kind of like full transparency from my end, because I hope that like kind of my story, people may be able to feel like they have some hope if they didn't get A's in every class. I actually did ask for a rec letter from my OChem teacher, who I didn't know super well, but I I got to know the TA that I worked with in the lab very well, and she vouched for me, even though I think I got a B plus in that class or something. But she vouched for me in terms of my work ethic, my intelligence, I guess you could say, or academic persistence. um, and I believe that letter did pretty well for me. I got a mention from it, so that's one way that you can go about things if perhaps you just didn't, for whatever reasons, personal or otherwise, didn't make it to all of the office hours. If you were able to get to know the TA pretty well, they can also help with writing the letter and vouching for you to a professor. I also got a letter from my research PI. I was in the translational research lab during undergraduate years. And then I also did some gap years, 2 gap years, in fact, which we'll probably talk about a little later, where I worked as a clinical research coordinator in a surgery department. And I got 2 more letters from there, a department chair and also my more direct mentor.
Yeah, well, everyone already said some really great tips. I'll add just a little different kind of story that I applied to medical school at 28. So I was quite a few years out from my undergraduate courses. So it's a little different in that I couldn't necessarily go and ask people from 6 years ago how to write me a letter of rec, except I did maintain really good mentorship and friendship with my organic chemistry professor and his wife, who acted sort of as mentors for me while I was an undergrad. So they were one of my letters. They kind of did a combined letter and talked both about my sort of scientific journey as well as who I was as a person. And I think everyone already mentioned you really want to have these letters highlight your strength as a sort of intelligent person, because there's a lot of scientific rigor involved in medical school, but also as a human. So you want people who have a good understanding of who you are. So the other 2 letters came from one of my colleagues who I was working with at the time in my postgraduate career. I guess I was working in a nonprofit global health work, and she wrote me a letter because I was doing research alongside her, so she was able to talk about the kind of work that I did in the research lab. And then I also taught briefly at Seattle Central Community College, and I had the dean, who was my supervisor there, write about my interactions with students and sort of like role in a more sort of humanities sense, but still having a little bit of scientific rigor associated with it.